up in the post office were the 4 businesses on the ground floor. And the second floor was apartments, 2 or 3 apartments, and there was a surveyor up there, landscape surveyor, land surveyor. And then Albert Bazzanotti had a little convenience store down on near the railroad, and that was about the basis for the shopping for the whole town. And most people, there was no place to go. You had to, well, you might go on to Sagamore. There were some good Italian stores in Sagamore, and there were quite a lot of Italian people in Sandwich, and they did like that, Italian type food. So people would travel that far, but I don't think they ever went to Hyannis to shop.
Too far to go.
Too far to go. They didn't.
How about going over the bridge? Did people?
Well, I remember I walked over the bridge on the dedication in a school band. And old Mr. Quersey was our band director, and the Sandwich, the Shawm band was made up of Bourne and Sandwich students. And we walked between the 2 bridges at 12 years old or something like that.
That must have been a big day to have that open up.
That was the best there ever was. But we got to connect. I don't think I ever drove to Boston. Well, Mother might have taken us, but we went by train pretty regular.
Oh, right there, beginning at the depot station on Jarvis
Street.
And
we went to Boston quite often on train.
That's amazing that people would love to do that today.
I know. Well, it's talking about doing something now. They tried to get something going earlier this year, but it didn't. It fell through, I guess. They didn't have time to put it together. The power plant wanted to give them a place to make a station there, because of good parking. But it was the old steam trains. They were the big old monsters, and they come screeching into town, and smoke and steam and whistle and.
And people didn't object to the noise and the pollution?
No, it was part of life. It was just the way it was. You took it, you didn't even think about it being dirty, or it was just the way things were.
Now, I know that you have been active in different town affairs, and for example, the fire department. I know that you were involved with the fire department some time ago, so why don't you tell me how that started and when that was and what your role was there?
Well, my involvement with the fire department began probably back in the 40s. There was nobody in town. Everybody was in the service except the older people, and I was one of the younger ones, and I got sort of involved with some of the old timers, and I was just sort of a fledgling, but I was interested, and I took the time to learn what I could. And then when things turned around after the war was over, I got appointed on the Board of Fire Engineers, who were the town overseers of the equipment and the rental of the building that we used in those days. And we spent the town's money and maintained what equipment we had to the best of our ability. And then there was really no organization, so the volunteer group sort of gelled together, and they became the volunteer fire department, and everybody who had anything to do with the fire department was automatically a member. And we started to train each other, and then somebody would come in from another town, had more experience than we did, and tried to help us train ourselves, and it sort of grew into quite a intelligent, active group. But there was a lot of jealousy, infighting, I don't know just what to call it, but the selectmen decided that they better have a fire chief and not a chief engineer, which is what we had up until then. So they took upon themselves to elect me.
And what year was that?
It would have been in the 50s or early 60s. I really couldn't tell you. I should have
Okay.
looked this up. If I
Oh,
known
it's
you were going to
okay.
ask me, I could have dug it up. But anyway, I did it for 4 years, and I had to do the oil burner inspections and the gas inspections, and which were never done before. And there were certain things that the state demanded that you do, and there was no head and a tail to it. So I sort of got that organized, and I did it for 4 years, and then I sort of got tired of doing all this for nothing. And Bernard Jones, who was another active fireman, he decided that he'd just soon do it. So I handed it over to him. And Bernard did it for a number of years, exactly how many I don't know. And then the town decided they needed a full-time fire chief. So Ferdinand Alvisi was one of the active ones who applied for the job and got it. And Ferd sort of really put the full-time fire department together. He had a lot of trouble getting all the bugs out of the volunteers who want to do this and do that, and he made it a call department, which you had to come to drill. You did get paid if you did come, and he sort of put the whole thing together it was the beginning of what we got today. But he spent, I don't know, 20 years at it. You'd have to check with Fred. He's still around. I would suggest you go see him and see if you can't have him fill in what I haven't given you.
And where was the fire station or fire department
Well, the fire
located?
station was in an old contractor's garage behind what used to be the old Dan Webster Inn, which was, the present inn is roughly on the same site as the old one was, but that burnt down, and the people who built the new one moved it back, and then we had this building which was a derelict building, and we had a hard time keeping it heated, and we depended on the personnel in the Webster to blow the siren, which was our only signal we had to arouse people. And it was sort of a volunteer on their part, and we paid the Webster people a minimum amount of rent for the building, but we sort of half maintained it. So then we went to bat to build a new fire station. And this was in the 51 or 52, we persuaded the town to let us build the present fire station. And I was on the committee along with 2 or 3 other people, and from out of the town hall. We shopped for an architect, and we got a Walter Gaffney down in Hyannis to be the architect. And he put the building together, and exactly what we wanted. It was a footprint of our desire to build a building like it is. And one of the highlights of the thing was, when he designed it as a wooden building. And we were sitting at a meeting one night, and I said to Walter, I said, what would it cost to make that out of brick? He said, let me find out. It only cost $3,000 more to make that a brick veneer building than it did make it out of wood. And we got a permanent building which we never had to paint, shingle, or anything. And I think it's still a beautiful building. And it's one of the first ones ever built on the Cape in 30, 40 years, and we were the gem of the fire stations. They came from all over eastern Massachusetts, small towns, to see what the little town of Sandwich could do. And in fact, we took people came and wanted to buy the prints. They wanted to do all kinds of things. Well, because we gave them to the architect, but we set an example that we were real proud of.
And it's been there for 50 or 60 years
Yeah,
now.
then they put the addition on the side, the 2-bay one on the side next to Tedeschi's there, for more room. But we had office room in one end, and the police were in there with us. And it was a functional building. It was a beautiful building, and it just was a nice entrance to town.
Excellent. Now, you've been involved in other town affairs. I thought you may have been on the school committee.
I was on school committee for 9 years.
Was that an elected position?
Yeah, I was elected, and my only thing I ever ran for, and I won 3 times, and that was enough. But I was on the high school building committee, and I was on both fire station building committees, the main one and then the satellite ones. And then Ben Fleet and myself and 2 or 3 other people are on a municipal building committee for a new town hall and municipal complex. And we ran that. We designed what we thought was something to go for 75 years, and they turned it down. Now they're spending more money fixing the old building up than we're going to cost to build that nice new one out on Quaker Meeting House Road.
Oh, wow.
The town owned the land, and we wanted to make it like a Lexington Village Green, but didn't work.
Too bad.
It was too bad.
Too bad.
It cost 10 times that to build the same thing today.
Now, we talked about Route 6A being put in I guess, the 1920s and how that affected things. How about the building of Route 6 itself and having that new highway coming down the spine of the Cape? How did that affect Sandwich and
well,
in particular?
When they first built it, they built one barrel, and everybody said, oh dear, we're going to lose all our business. Well, it was a blessing in disguise because Route 6A was so heavy with traffic that people would never stop. And now we became a destination town, and people would get off, and we found that it was increased our business. I don't know whether that was true of everybody, but it took the people going to Hyannis weren't going to stop in Sandwich. And it just got them by without bothering us, filling the streets with unwanted traffic.
Mm-hmm. And that changed the whole nature of the southern part of Sandwich in that lots of
but
building.
That didn't, it went out where in South Sandwich now, where the second center of town is. Tommy, when he moved out there 30 years ago, that was just a wise place in the road. And he's just done a marvelous job of building a second community out there. There's as many things out there as there are in the village now.
And who did you give credit for that?
Tommy, what's his last name?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't.
Tom, all right.
Yeah, he was a fellow who started out with a pizza parlor, and he's parlayed it into quite a development. Then, of course, people came in to associate themselves with him, and so, there's everything out there we got in town. There's a grocery store and a drugstore and barber shops and lumberyard, and it's just a second town. Mm-hmm. And then developed all around it. I mean, that was all woods as I was a kid. We used to have, a lot of us had old Model T, Model A cars that we drove through the woods before there was any building. We could drive from here to Cotuit or to Pecasset down to Marston's Mills through the woods. And, that's when gasoline was 7 gallons for $1. And we could ride all day for 50 cents.
And you were riding through fire lanes? Or
no, these are all woods roads, because in the old days, everybody in town had a wood lot to cut their wood off of, and they made these natural rutted roads through the woods. And they were maintained well enough to let you get through, but they went all over what's now Camp Edwards. You could go from Sandwich to Pecasset on the old Pecasset Road with just 2 ruts through the woods.
Now, you've had a lot of friendships here in town, I imagine, being here for all these years.
Yeah.
And a number of the friends are still friends of yours today. Who might they be?
Well, unfortunately, most of my friends are gone. And Fred Alvisi, my brother-in-law, who became the fire chief there, and there are very few people left in town who, there's several, I think I'm the only one left of the boys in my class, but there were 3 or 4 of the girls are still here. And we see each other once in a while, and in fact, Fred Alvisi's sister was one of them, Margarita, and Jacqueline Snow Staples.
How many people were in your high school class?
Well, we had a big one. We had 21. My sister graduated with 4, or 6, I guess it was.
Wow.
But that's how, there was only less than 200 people in the whole school system in those days. Now we graduate 350 a year. So.
Wow. Is there anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you'd like to get on tape?
Well, I don't know. It's
Or anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't discussed?
well, I've seen a lot of things built in town. Power plant, which I was very much for, which turned the town around, really.
How did it turn it around?
Well, we had a tax base that wasn't a house. It was new money, and it really sponsored all the schools, and the fire and police department wouldn't be what they are today without the beginning with the power plant, because they paid good taxes, they employed good paying jobs, and most of the people who worked there lived in town or moved here, and they became good citizens and encouraged local people to work there. And it gave, but in those days the power plant paid, I don't know, 15% of our taxes. Now it's down to 2%, because it was so big compared to the size of the town. And it turned the town around. I mean, those will say, well, it's an eyesore, and well, if you ever went inside it and saw the machinery in that thing, it was just mind-boggling. At the time, it was the most efficient power plant in the world, oil burner. And I became good friends with the superintendent. I used to go in there once a month and tours. They used to give tours to people to see it, and I became so often that Bill Smith used to say, well, you got to use you as a tour guide. He said, you know much about as we do. But I just liked that kind of, good machinery, beautiful. It was just, to me, it was a very mind-boggling piece of equipment.
Wow. And
enlarging the marina, they dredged that dry and then made a dike between what was the old harbor of refuge, they called it. It was just a little hole in the wall, sort of, off the canal, and a few fishing boats wrapped it in there side by side, and there was no slips or anything. And then they dredged that part dry and left a dike between the whole thing, and then when they had it all cleaned up and all rip-wrapped, all done on dry land, they had to pump water out all the time, but you could drive a truck down there, and
wow.
And then when it was all said and done, they broke the dike and dredged the rest of it out and put the marina in and put the piers in and like that. It was quite an engineering project. And for us, I mean, I was a great sidewalk superintendent. I loved, I worked on the water district, the original water system.
Tell us about the water district and the system.
Well, the town group got together right after World War II, I think in 1946, and decided the town needed municipal water. And the group that they had as the original water commissioners, they went to bat, and in a very short time got the whole thing engineered and put it to the town, and they approved it. And local John Gallo in Sagamore got the contract for building the whole system. And I worked for him for a couple of winters, laying water mains and putting house services, and great guy to work for, John was.
And that brought the water all the way through
Well,
Sandwich Village down to East Sandwich?
Originally it tied into Sagamore, and it only went as far as my street, Charles Street, and it went as far as the Wing School up 130, and it didn't include Town Neck. It was just the very village. I don't know how many miles of pipe it was. It wasn't very many. And then the following year, they did Town Neck, and that was a separate John did that one too, and tied that into the system. And the only pump at that time was one little pump right in the same lot that the Water District building is in now. And then as the system grew, by the first extension came down my street and down 6A a little further, and then they needed more water, so they extended it down to Greenbrier, where the present district has 2 or 3 wells. And that was the original good source of water. The first well finally got flooded, and they abandoned it. It was down too low, and one of the years they had a flood, and they lost the whole thing. So, but the new well was working. So, and since then, of course, they've expanded to what, 90% of the town. I think there's a little space that hasn't got it yet, but.
Now, Town Neck was an area that back in the 19th century, people would bring their cattle to and let them graze out there.
Yeah.
And then later on, it became a place where people would build some houses on there. Do you recall what that looked like in the 30s and 40s?
Oh,
and
that
how it
was
changed?
pure bare land. And it wasn't until the 50s it became a development, or late 40s. But I can remember there was a road across the top, a dirt road, and a tugboat went ashore on the rocky part of the bay on Town Neck, and they abandoned it. And we all went out there and sort of took what we could off the boat. It was salvage. Mm-hmm. And I got some steel plates that I had made a welding bench out of, and they finally stripped the tug hull down to a bare hull, you know. But there was just a dirt road over the top of the mountain, of the neck, and down where the old clay pit was, where they used to make bricks. And the water hole there had goldfish in it, and it was the hole that they dug the clay out of when there was a brickyard there. Mm-hmm. I don't remember that, but that was...
No, that was back in the 1800s.
Way back, but that was just, the hole was there. Uh-huh. But of course, the brickwork was gone.
And that's all housing now?
Yeah, all housing. They filled in the hole. And.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's from what you've told me, you were really interested in mechanical things.
Oh, I love mechanical things.
And you were a farmer that loved mechanical things.
Yeah,
How did that work out?
Well, I built half our tools. I liked to weld, and I had enough seat of the pants engineering so I could figure things out. And I used to, I had a couple of big tractors. I had a big bulldozer once, and I used to do my own repair work, and always did my own. We maintained all our machinery and built a lot of specialty tools that you couldn't buy.
And did you put your own irrigation system?
Oh, built all that, buried. I got a half a mile of buried pipe. I welded it all together and put it together underground. Wow. And designed the whole thing.
And that's an ongoing farm now? And
oh, yeah.
And when is your, for those of us who aren't farmers, when is your planting season, and when do you come to market with your products?
Well,
And
we've
what
already
happens during the winter?
See, I spoke about us having the greenhouse with tomatoes in it. Well, a friend of mine, Walter Morrison, who used to have the Agway store in East Sandwich, he came to me one day and he said, Howard, he said, I got a problem. He said, I can sell lots of flower bedding plants, but he said, I haven't got room to grow them. He said, would you ever consider growing flowers instead of tomatoes? Well, I hedged and hawed on it. And what he said, oh, would you try? He said, if you don't do as well as the tomatoes, I'll make up the difference. I never grew another tomato. And now we got 15 greenhouses, and we're building another one this year. And all for bedding plants. And we wholesale them. We retail a lot of them, but we wholesale them to many contractors, our landscapers, the town of Sandwich, town of Yarmouth, Cape Cod Mall, or our plants, all the down at Webster, John Carver, Cape Cod Resort, all their plants come from us. Wow. Cape Cod Mall come from us.
I had no idea.
And we have probably 20 landscapers who come, help themselves, write the note on the wall. We send them a bill. Money's there next week. Sort of a handshake.
So you still do it the old-fashioned way?
Do it the old-fashioned way.
A handshake and a promise?
We grow things they want us to do. And by them asking us to grow a certain flower or a certain plant, we found that we can retail them ourselves, and we acknowledge the fact that we would never done it if they hadn't asked us to start. Mm-hmm. And that's the evolution. We've cut back from 15 acres to fruit trees to 5, and we've grown from 5 acres to 12 acres of sweet corn. Wow. And we just rolled with the punches. We do a lot of drip irrigation now instead of overhead. It's simple to do, uses a quarter the amount of water. It prevents disease, you don't get things wet. You can fertilize that way where you can't fertilize any other if you're doing overhead stuff.
And what happens during the fall and the winter season?
Well, we've started, the greenhouse has started already. We've got like pansies and some of the real early bedding plants. We make up color bowls with different kinds of flowers in, and we're working on those today. And we haven't planted anything outside yet. But
and we're talking in early March here, 2010.
And we don't put anything outside until probably the first part of April. We'll seed some vegetables.
And then you're open all season, all the way towards Christmas, aren't you?
We open from 1st of May till Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm. And that farm stand that's there today, did you're such a handy person? Did you build that, or
no? I designed it, but I didn't build it. We had a local person build that. In fact, they built that in the winter up in Sagamore, and flaked. It was a prefab building that a local person did, and he built it in a garage up in Sagamore, and brought it down without the shingles.